Okay, imagine for a second that you're tasked with building this magnificent, sprawling house. You've got this vivid picture of the finished product right in your head. You know exactly what the front door looks like, the exact shade of paint you want for the kitchen, the whole shebang. But there's a pretty massive catch. You have absolutely no blueprint. You just start hammering wood together on an empty dirt lot. So what happens? Well, best case scenario, nothing gets built. Worst case, the walls literally come crashing down on you. And in the world of academic and scientific research, having a brilliant research question without a solid research design is exactly the same thing. Without a blueprint, your study is destined to collapse under scrutiny. So, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to learn how to draft that blueprint. Because the stakes here are incredibly high. Whether you're exploring a groundbreaking new medical treatment, analyzing behavioral psychology, or just studying market trends, the validity of literally everything you discover depends entirely on the framework you build it on. A good question simply isn't enough on its own. It desperately needs a great blueprint to actually uncover the truth. Okay, let's dive into this and look at how our source material lays this out for us. Take a look at this quote drawn directly from our source document. It reads, "Selecting an appropriate research design is the foundational step of any study. It serves as your strategic blueprint." We're grounding our entire explainer today in this exact architectural metaphor because, honestly, it perfectly captures what a research design actually is. It's not just tedious paperwork. It is the fundamental geometry of your entire investigation. Here's our agenda for today. We'll start with 1, the strategic blueprint. 2, choosing your data type. 3, matching design to question. 4, the reality check. And we'll wrap up with 5 key design features. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the strategic blueprint, laying the groundwork. Before we actually start pouring the foundation, let's look at what this blueprint actually accomplishes for us. So, your strategic blueprint does 3 massive things. First, it aligns your specific research questions. Basically, it makes sure that what you want to know is actually what you're measuring. Second, it selects the most effective data collection and analysis methods. You wouldn't use a tape measure to check the temperature, right? The design makes absolutely sure you have the right tools in your belt. And third, and this is definitely the most important, it ensures valid, actionable, and reliable results. If you skip this groundwork, you might collect absolute mountains of data, but none of it is going to be considered valid or reliable by the broader research community. Moving right along to Section 2, choosing your data type, selecting your building materials. We essentially have 2 primary building materials here, and they're each meant for completely different jobs. On one side, we have qualitative data. Think of this as your flexible architectural detail work. It's exploratory. It asks the big why and how questions. It relies heavily on lived experiences, attitudes, and behaviors. It's just incredibly rich, deep, and nuanced. On the other side, though, we have quantitative data. Think of this as your heavy steel beams and poured concrete. It's explanatory and descriptive. It's all about measuring hard quantities, strictly testing hypotheses, and seeking results that are mathematically generalizable across a large population. You really have to know which material your specific house requires. But what if you need both? Well, that brings us to mixed methods. This approach combines both qualitative and quantitative strategies to give you a much deeper, comprehensive understanding. Because sometimes a really complex issue just cannot be understood solely by looking at a spreadsheet of numbers. Nor can it be fully understood just by interviewing a few people. You need this ultimate hybrid material to really provide that depth. It's exactly like combining rigid steel for structural strength with, say, wood for warmth and flexibility. So the crucial point here is matching your architectural goals to the right framework. That brings us to Section 3, matching design to question, erecting the structural framework. Now, this is where the magic really happens. Your specific research objective strictly dictates your entire design framework. For example, if your goal is simply to observe and record facts, to just describe a phenomenon, you'd use descriptive, cross-sectional, or case study designs. You aren't manipulating anything there, you're just observing. But if you want to find connections or trends to see how variables interact without necessarily proving one caused the other, well, then you rely on a correlational design. Now, what about establishing cause and effect? That is the holy grail for a lot of researchers. If you want to prove that A absolutely undoubtedly causes B, you need an experimental design, specifically randomized controlled trials. But wait, what if you literally can't randomize your subjects? Then you pivot to a quasi-experimental design. And finally, if your objective is getting a deep understanding of lived experiences or complex social meanings, you're going to employ things like phenomenological designs, ethnography, or case studies. Essentially, your question is the lock, and your objective provides the exact key. All right, time for section 4, the reality check. The building inspector arrives. You might have dreamed up this gorgeous, sprawling research mansion, but now the city inspector is here to kind of crush your dreams, or at least tell you what you're actually legally allowed to build. Because the reality is, even the most rigorously designed study is absolutely useless if it isn't practically achievable. Here are the major logistical hurdles, the constraints every single researcher has to clear. First up, time and timeline. Second, budget and resources. I mean, let's face it, big experiments require serious funding. Third, access to participants. Can you actually find enough people to make your test statistically valid? And fourth, ethics. Let's actually break down a couple of these inspectors in more detail, starting with time. Time constraints can drastically alter the scope of your entire blueprint. You essentially have a major choice to make here. You can do a cross-sectional study, which means collecting data at one very specific point in time. It's essentially a snapshot. It is significantly faster and, frankly, much cheaper. Alternatively, if your question really requires seeing how things evolve over time, you need a longitudinal study. This means studying subjects over a long period. Now, longitudinal studies are incredibly powerful. It's exactly like watching a feature-length film instead of just looking at a single photograph. But man, they are expensive, exhaustive, and demand incredible resources. And then there's the ultimate building inspector. Ethics. Here's the golden rule. If randomizing participants causes harm or denies them essential treatment, an experimental design is instantly off the table. Let's say you have a promising new drug for a severe illness. The pure experimental design would be to randomly give it to half your sick patients and give the other half a placebo. But wait, if giving a placebo deliberately denies a dying patient a potentially life-saving treatment, you've crossed a major ethical boundary. Your grand experimental design gets an immediate rejection stamp. And this exact scenario is why researchers so frequently have to pivot to those quasi-experimental designs we talked about a minute ago. Ethics truly dictate the final boundaries of your blueprint. Let's pull all of this together in our final segment, Section 5, Key Design Features, the ultimate cheat sheet. Here is where the dividing lines between the major approaches become crystal clear. Let's look at randomization first. Only experimental designs use it. That is your absolute crucial pivot point right there. What about control groups? Experimental definitely has them. Quasi-experimental, maybe. Non-experimental, no way. Do you manipulate the independent variable? Well, in both experimental and quasi-experimental, yes you do, but absolutely not in non-experimental. And finally, look at the desired results at the bottom there. Both experimental and quasi-experimental are chasing that holy grail, cause and effect. But non-experimental designs are focused on descriptive, exploratory, correlational, or comparative results. This little matrix essentially encapsulates the entire strategic choice of your research design. Seriously, take a screenshot, memorize it, and let it guide your construction. So, we've covered the materials, the structural frameworks, the harsh logistical hurdles, and the very real ethical realities of crafting a study. Building a rigorous study is undeniably hard work. But when you respect the process and align your methods perfectly with your specific objectives, well, the results can literally change the world. You have your question. Now, what will your blueprint look like? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning, keep building, and I'll catch you next time.